Your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
Namaste. Hello, friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to start again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at yoursarthi@such.org.in.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Hem Kaur Saroya, and on the show today, this is big. In what it says was a slip, the United States Supreme Court says it inadvertently and briefly published an all-important opinion on abortion rights, which hinted at overturning Idaho's near-total ban on abortion. Now, it's an uncanny development, considering in the past, twice the opinion on Roe v. Wade was mistakenly published, once in 1973 and another abortion ruling which overruled Roe v. Wade in 2022. Now, what does one make of this? That's something we'll discuss on the show today.
And also, the leak happened just hours before the Biden-Trump debate. Of course, there are implications. We will be tracking that closely with our guests right here on World DNA. Also on the show, we will bring you all the updates of the failed coup attempt in Bolivia as Bolivian authorities arrested General Juan Zuniga hours after troops stormed the presidential palace amid a military coup attempt. We will be bringing you the latest on that right here on World DNA. Let's get you started with the headlines.
The US Supreme Court appears poised to allow abortions to be performed in Idaho in cases of medical emergencies. In a stunning mistake, a copy of the judgment was briefly posted on the court's website.
Bolivia's army chief is arrested after sending soldiers and tanks to take up positions in front of government buildings in what President Luis calls an attempted coup.
Israel and the United States say they've made progress towards resolving a rift over U.S. weapons shipments. This after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu publicly accused President Joe Biden of slowing down deliveries.
Stage is set for the Trump-Biden debate. The current Democratic president and his Republican predecessor will face off in Atlanta, Georgia for the first of two debates ahead of November's vote. Both men are under scrutiny over their age and stamina.
It was a very dangerous bill.
Coronavirus. New poll survey indicates that Labour maintaining lead in the UK while the Conservatives fall back to equal their lowest ever vote share. Rishi Sunak turns out to be the most unpopular Prime Minister ever at this stage of the campaign.
With the Conservatives,
President Draupadi Murmu will address the joint sitting of the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha today. She is expected to unveil the priorities of the newly elected government led by Prime Minister Modi.
Amazon becomes the fifth US company to hit $2 trillion in market value on Wednesday. Amazon now joins the league of tech heavyweights such as Microsoft, Nvidia, Alphabet and Apple in the $2 trillion club.
Georgia stunned Cristiano Ronaldo's Portugal to book their spot in the last 16 of the European Championships. It is the biggest upset in terms of rankings in the tournament's history.
For the second time in 2 years in the United States, a major Supreme Court abortion decision has been accidentally leaked before the justices officially released it.
Well, this time, however, the most likely explanation is a clerical error by someone who manages the court's website. Now, according to the leaked post, it appears that the Supreme Court was ready to overturn part of Idaho's near-total ban on abortion. The copy of the opinion that Bloomberg obtained is subject to change, of course. The court acknowledged a document was briefly posted but stressed that no opinion is final until announced by the justices.
This is reminiscent of an incident which occurred 2 years ago in early draft of Justice Samuel Alito's opinion in Dobbs v. Jackson, Women's Health Organization. The case overruling Roe v. Wade was leaked to the press as well.
A pro-choice protester and a group of anti-abortion protesters engaged in angry exchanges in front of the court on Wednesday morning as the justices prepared to deliver one of its most significant rulings on the scope of abortion access following the striking down of Roe v. Wade.
The justices on the 24th of April heard arguments in the case pitting Idaho's strict Republican-backed abortion ban against a 1986 federal law that ensures that patients can receive emergency care. However, the court appeared split during that hearing. President Joe Biden's administration, which sued Idaho over the abortion law, has urged the justices to uphold that ruling. Now, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York as well. Listen to this.
The Supreme Court accidentally posted a document online related to a pending abortion case, which was obtained by a Bloomberg law before it was removed. The document suggested that the court will ultimately dismiss a dispute over Idaho's abortion law, allowing emergency room doctors to perform abortion in the state. The court did confirm the mistake, stating that the document was quote-unquote inadvertently and briefly uploaded on its website, but also emphasized that the ruling has not been officially released. An early version of a ruling in a reproductive right case has now been released twice in 2 years. You may remember that the leaked draft of the court's landmark decision to overturn Roe v. Wade was obtained by Politico weeks before the opinion was even announced back in June of 2022. The leaked document and the final ruling in that case were substantially the same. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
Now for more on this, we're being joined by Mark Merowitz, lawyer and political commentator and a professor at State University of New York Maritime College, joining us live from New York. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
Sir, now, as I mentioned earlier, we've seen 2 leaks before this as well. This one is being deemed a clerical error. Now, my question is, how does that happen? What does one make of this?
Well, I'll tell you that, I took 2 groups of students to the Supreme Court to sit in on cases, and we had a tour. And one of the things that they told us on the tour was that there really isn't internet in the court, that they're so worried about security and about information getting out. They have all kinds of protective procedures in place to secure the secrecy of the decisions until they come out. So now, as you've indicated, we had the Dobbs case, 2022, which was an earthquake decision overturning Roe v. Wade after 50 years of settled law on abortion. And now we have this case being inadvertently leaked the day before or so a presidential debate. It's just interesting also that both cases leaked relate to abortion. And in the case of the Dobbs leak, no one was ever located or proved to have been responsible for that leak, which to me is very problematic. I think in this one, Chief Justice Roberts really has to get to the bottom of this, because the secrecy of these decisions is pivotal in terms of preserving the rule of law in the United States. I'm a lawyer. I mean, we don't really think kindly on decisions of this moment being released. And these are very significant decisions. The problem you have also is you leak a draft of the opinion and then you give out the final opinion. That causes incredible confusion in understanding what the law is. And actually, what happened in this case, as a practical matter, is that the case ultimately is going to be postponed until after the election. Yes. This abortion issue is a absolute volcano issue in American politics. Yes. And one that is very hard to solve.
Mark, now, even back in 1973, it was a clerk who leaked the verdict, at least for Roe v. Wade. And of course, there were major protests. It got overturned. This time, they're calling it a clerical error. It's difficult to differentiate what a clerical error is from a clerk who's leaking it. But at the moment, that's what we need to just go by. That's what's been told. But, of course, as you mentioned, abortion rights, it's a volcanic issue at the moment, given that the presidential elections are just months away and we're hours away from the presidential debate between Biden and Trump. Also, Idaho is one of the most staunchly Republican states. You'll obviously understand that best. I wanted to understand, what are the wider implications you foresee of this leak?
Well, again, when you say the wider implications, I think that certainly the clerical error explanation are really not going to hold water. So the efficiency of the Supreme Court and ability to be the highest court in the American system and the one to which all lawyers and all courts look to for guidance is somewhat attenuated. And Chief Justice Roberts didn't solve the last leak, so he's really got to solve this. But I think that the political context of it is what is behind this. It's not that there's any conspiracy to do this. I don't think so. But it's just very problematic because abortion rights is a very big issue in the presidential campaign. It's a very big issue and very divisive in American politics. How you solve it is really impossible in the sense that in this case, as you indicated, you have the federal statute that allows abortions in emergency cases, and the Idaho statute, like many state laws, right, saying that the patient, the individual has to be on the brink of death to get an abortion. And so that's, how do you solve that? Now, one solution is to say that the federal law takes precedence because our federal laws preempt state laws. Well, but in the Dobbs case, the idea there was that they overturned Roe v. Wade and said, okay, from now on, we don't have a federal standard, which was Roe v. Wade. Now the states will decide. So if you think that's convoluted, I don't know how to solve this. You have two completely opposing points of view that cannot be easily reconciled. So I think what ends up happening here is the thing gets postponed till after the election, and then we're still in a element of conundrum. By the way, one thing interesting about this case, if it's correct, is that Amy Coney Barrett's opinion here is interesting. And she also, I think, played a pivotal role in the recent case involving the government trying to shut down social media statements regarding controversial political issues. So we do see some interesting moves and switches in terms of the coalitions inside the court. But hey, how do we know this is correct, right? You say it's a draft.
It's a draft. Of course, the final verdict is, it just creates... It creates more confusion, and of course we will need to track that closely. Thank you so much for joining us, Mark. Of course, as a lawyer, you understand the subject better than most. That was Mark Merowitz, lawyer and political commentator, joining us from New York.
Thank you.
All right, in a dramatic series of events that played out in Bolivia as the South American country came dangerously close to an armed regime change.
Well, following the thwarting of the attempted military coup, the now dismissed army commander Juan Jose Zuniga, accused of leading the charge, has been placed under arrest by the Bolivian government.
Right, and it all happened in a matter of hours. A faction of the Bolivian armed forces pushing the coup seized the capital city's Central Square on Wednesday. Heavily armed soldiers, armored vehicles were seen gathering in the Central Square Plaza Murillo. This while an armored military vehicle was seen ramming through the entrance of the presidential palace with soldiers pouring into the palace compound, but troops and armored vehicles later began to pull back. Supporters flooded into the plaza outside soon afterwards, waving Bolivian flags.
Following the coup attempt against Commander Juan Jose Zuniga was captured and taken to a police vehicle outside a military barrack. Now, Bolivia's public prosecutor's office has stated that a criminal investigation against Zuniga is currently being pursued. President was quick to fill in the power vacuum left by Zuniga's dismissal by appointing new military chiefs right after the incident. Jose Sanchez, appointed Wednesday as commander of the Bolivian army, stated that he and the rest of the generals will ensure the legal government remains in power according to what the state's laws require.
Heavily armed Bolivian soldiers and armored vehicles took over the capital's Central Square Wednesday, home to the presidential palace and Congress, in what the country's president called an attempted coup. As troops surrounded Plaza Murillo, a military commander can be heard telling soldiers to stand firm. Bolivian President Luis Arce demanded the military action be called off, denouncing what he called an irregular mobilization of some army units in La Paz. In a video posted on Facebook, Arce addressed the nation alongside government officials, calling on citizens to mobilize for democracy and against the coup. According to a Reuters witness, an armored vehicle rammed into a door of the presidential palace and soldiers rushed in. Former leader Evo Morales, who has publicly split with Arce, although both belong to the same socialist movement, accused top general Juan Jose Zuniga of plotting a coup. Tensions have been building in Bolivia ahead of the general elections in 2025, with Morales planning to run against Arce, creating a rift in the ruling Socialist Party and wider political uncertainty. Many do not want a return of Morales, who governed from 2006 to 2019, when he was ousted amongst widespread protests and replaced by an interim conservative government. Arce then won election in 2020. The landlocked South American country is also battling an economic slump, with depleted central bank reserves and pressure on the Boliviano currency as gas exports have dried up. The United States said it was closely monitoring the situation and urged calm and restraint.
All right, wrapping up a visit to the United States, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant made it clear that the country was fighting against Hamas, Hezbollah and the Iranian regime and not the people of Gaza or Lebanon.
Fight those who seek to harm us. Together, let's move forward with strength and compassion. Thank you.
Gallant underlined that there has been significant progress on the issue of U.S. munitions supply to Israel. Gallant and U.S. officials sought to cool tensions following Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent claims that Washington was withholding weapons.
U.S. has decided to keep the pause on a shipment of heavy bombs. The shipment was paused in May over concerns that they could cause more civilian deaths in Gaza. However, the U.S. weapons will continue to flow to Israel as it battles Hamas in Gaza and faces Lebanese Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon. This, according to a statement by the U.S. Post National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan's meeting with Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant.
Meanwhile, the Israeli offensive continues in an airstrike on a building in the southern city. At least 5 Lebanese civilians were injured.
Now, speaking of Gaza, at least 18 people were killed and several others were injured in 3 airstrikes that hit crowded Jabalia refugee camp. The outgoing UN relief chief has expressed concern about the spillage of the Israeli war in Gaza to Lebanon, saying it could be potentially apocalyptic.
With UK general elections just a week away, polls conducted between the 21st of June and the 24th indicate that the Labour is maintaining its lead, with Conservatives falling back to equal their lowest ever vote share.
Well, let's take a look at the big takeaways of the poll survey, starting with the Ipsos Political Monitor. Labour hold a 23-point lead over the Conservatives here. Labour lead voting intentions by 42% to Conservatives 19%. Reform UK is up 6 points to 15% and Liberal Democrats up to 11%.
At least 36% of the voters say they may change their mind before the polls. Among those who may change their mind, 21% are considering the vote for the Labour Party, 19% Liberal Democrat and 7% each are considering the Conservatives and Reform UK. But majority of the voters say they will support the party which best represents their views. Let's just get a glimpse of the attitude of the voters towards the government and their leaders as well. The poll suggests 83% are dissatisfied with the government running in the country. Rishi Sunak happens to be the most unpopular Prime Minister ever at this stage of the campaign.
Only 20% are satisfied with his job as Prime Minister. The previous worst was John Major back in 1997. Now, when it comes to disliking leaders, at least 67% dislike Rishi Sunak, which is up from 49% just a year ago. According to the polls, 72% are not fond of Conservative Party, which is up from 67% a year ago. Meanwhile, 57% dislike Keir Starmer, and this is Starmer's worst score, but not as bad as the 73% who disliked Jeremy Corbyn in 2019. Now, Jewish support for Labour has spiked under the leadership of Labour Party leader Keir Starmer. Polling suggests that 46% of British Jewish people intend to vote for the party in the general election.
Now, that is up 11% from the last poll. The anti-Semitism crisis under Jeremy Corbyn, it's not collapsed the support for the party, but it led to the community to fear victory of Labour.
However, this time around, the sentiments are different. With the election taking place in the wake of the worst period of anti-Semitism, polls show 1 in 3 Jewish voters are ready to support Labour on the 4th of July. The latest polling indicate a fundamental change in the relationship between Jewish people and the Labour Party. Back in 2020, after a government watchdog found the party broke equality law in handling anti-Semitism complaints under Corbyn, Starmer had urged a culture change.
This report is painful to read, but I urge everyone to do so, because this must be a line in the sand. There could be no more missed opportunities, no more denials or excuses. under my leadership, Labour will act decisively against anti-Semitism in all its forms.
The poll suggests British Jews and other UK voters share common priorities when it comes to health, education and the cost of living. According to the polls, the British Jews want to support a party which protects their interests. However, the voters fear the Labour might replace Starmer with a leader who would reverse the progress on anti-Semitism.
Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has claimed that Starmer failed to eradicate anti-Semitism from Labour Party. He cited February's Rochdale by-election when the Labour Party was forced to drop its candidate for anti-Semitic remarks.
All right, time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. Of course, we will be back after the break. On the other side, astronauts aboard Boeing's Starliner are facing a delay in their return due to technical issues. Now, the capsule's first crewed mission might need an extension, and SpaceX Crew Dragon could be a backup option here. We are going to be bringing you the latest on that.
Also on the other side, Indian President Draupadi Murmu will address the parliament. We'll get you the full story on the other side.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I actually pushed myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Rwanda's President Paul Kagame, leader of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, defends his country's democratic credentials as campaigning opens for the July 15th presidential election, with the incumbent widely expected to extend his 24-year iron-fisted rule over the Great Lakes nation. Top comedian turned politician Michael Yusi sworn in as Malawi's vice president. The 55-year-old replaces Saulos Chilima, who died in a plane crash earlier this month. And the rainbow flag flies high in Namibia as court declares laws banning gay sex unconstitutional. Watch World of Africa at these times on WION. World is One.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays, 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Who will the Iranians vote to succeed Raisi on June 28? 6 candidates on the presidential ballot with no clear favorites. In fray, former IRGC commanders, heart surgeon and Tehran's mayor. Will there be a unity candidate? Time will tell. WION decodes Iran's race to power. WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back, viewers. Thank you so much for staying with us. This is World DNA with Haim and me, Shivan. Let's get you started with the headlines we're tracking for you at this hour.
The US Supreme Court appears poised to allow abortions to be performed in Idaho in cases of medical emergencies. In a stunning mistake, a copy of the judgment was briefly posted on the court's website.
Bolivia's army chief is arrested after sending soldiers and tanks to take up positions in front of the government buildings in what President Luis calls an attempted coup.
Israel and the United States say they've made progress towards resolving a rift over US weapons shipments. This after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu publicly accused President Joe Biden of slowing down deliveries.
The stage is set for the Trump-Biden debate. The current Democratic president and his Republican predecessor will face off in Atlanta, Georgia for the first of 2 debates ahead of November's vote. Both men are under scrutiny for their age.
New poll survey indicates that Labour maintaining lead in the UK while the Conservatives fall back to equal their lowest ever vote share. Rishi Sunak turns out to be the most unpopular Prime Minister ever at this stage of the campaign.
President Draupadi Murmu will address the joint sitting of the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha today. She is expected to unveil the priorities of the newly elected government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Amazon became the fifth US company to hit $2 trillion in market value on Wednesday. Amazon now joins the league of tech heavyweights such as Microsoft, Nvidia, Alphabet and Apple in the $2 trillion club.
Georgia stunned Cristiano Ronaldo's Portugal to book their spot in the last 16 of the European Championships. It is the biggest upset in terms of rankings in the tournament's history.
Indian President Draupadi Murmu will address the parliament today. The president will reach the parliament in a procession from the Rashtrapati Bhavan.
Well, she will be escorted by horse-mounted presidential bodyguards. Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Speaker of the lower house Om Birla will receive the president at the parliament entrance.
Article 87 of the Indian Constitution confers the right on the President to address a joint session of both the houses of the Parliament at the commencement of the first session after the general elections. In her address after the constitution of the 18th Lok Sabha, the President is expected to unveil the priorities of the newly elected National Democratic Alliance government. Also, she will highlight the steps taken by the government in the previous term.
Following the address, the ruling party will move a motion of thanks in both the houses. The debate on the motion of thanks will begin on 28th of June and the Prime Minister will respond on the 2nd of July. As part of its long-term strategy to reduce dependence on China, American tech giant Apple has been making forays into India.
Well, not directly, but via contract manufacturers who set up mass assembly lines to assemble millions of Apple iPhones. And recent reports indicate that a major Apple contract manufacturer in India is discriminating against married women and prefers to recruit only unmarried women.
Well, Taiwanese firm Foxconn of the Honhai Technology Group conglomerate is the world's largest contract manufacturer. The assembly of Apple iPhones is also outsourced to Foxconn, among other firms. And India is not only a growing market for Apple's premium gadgets, but also an important hub where Apple gadgets, chiefly the iPhones, are assembled. The group operates a massive facility near Tamil Nadu's capital, Chennai. It deals with the assembly of Apple's premium iPhones. Here, thousands of workers churn out millions of iPhones every year.
The facility predominantly employs young women in their assembly lines. It offers a source of livelihood for thousands of young women and generates economic activity. But there is a catch. A recent report indicates that the firm only employs unmarried women, does not prefer employing married women, as I mentioned earlier. Here's why. According to the report, those associated with Foxconn see married women as those with higher responsibilities, family duties, pregnancies and higher absenteeism. And apparently the firm sees this as a major reason to recruit only unmarried women.
This is in violation of Apple's and Foxconn's policies, which prohibit discrimination on the basis of marital status, gender, religion. This goes on to show that global firms often speak of high ethical and moral standards, but are not keen on always following them.
In late 2021, several lapses at a Foxconn offsite dormitory near Chennai led to protests from women workers. As a result, the Foxconn plant had to temporarily halt production. Apple had placed the plant on probation for a few months. The plant resumed production only in early 2022 after corrective measures and inspections were undertaken.
Firms like Foxconn have a not so good track record in China too. There have been allegations of extremely stringent working conditions, issues with pay, which led to protests. Now, with the latest report highlighting the discrimination against married women, the government of India is likely to seek a clarification from the concerned firms. The Indian authorities are expected to ask Foxconn to clarify regarding their HR policies. Let's get more details from WION's senior correspondent Siddharth MP.
We are given to understand that the Indian government's Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade is going to conduct a probe against Taiwanese firm Foxconn. Foxconn is a contract manufacturer that assembles Apple's gadgets among those of other international firms. Near Chennai in Sriperumbudur, Foxconn operates a huge factory with thousands of women workers. But the report is that Foxconn discriminates against married women and recruits predominantly unmarried women because they see married women as those with liabilities and responsibilities. We visited Foxconn's offsite dorm a couple of years ago. This is a dorm near Sriperumbudur. We learnt a few things. Firstly, Foxconn recruits women who are not from Chennai. They recruit women who are from other districts and smaller towns and villages. These women are mostly 10th or 12th pass, which are not so educated people. They don't have a college degree. But then these women are provided much of it for free. They're provided free accommodation, free food and free transport to and from their workplaces. But these women have to live in hostel-like dorms where the conditions are very tough and there are also very strict rules and regulations. Multiple women have to stay in a single room sharing the facility. At the same time, they are not provided holidays or leaves at a time of their preference. It's only sometimes during the weekends that they get it, and sometimes for emergencies or festivals, they're not permitted to go back home. Such are the conditions there in their workplace as well. So this makes it kind of tough for most women, which is why married women predominantly do not join such organizations. And even the conditions there are set in such a way that only unmarried women from the lower strata of society work over there. From Chennai, Siddharth MP, WION, World is One.
Moving on now, Amazon, it's crossed a historic threshold. The e-commerce giant's market capitalization surpassed $2 trillion for the first time on Wednesday.
Well, this achievement places Amazon among an elite group of companies, joining Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet and Nvidia in the $2 trillion club. This surge can be attributed partly to the broader tech rally driven by excitement surrounding artificial intelligence, particularly generative AI. Amazon Web Services, a key pillar of the company's growth, is well positioned to benefit from this AI boom. Additionally, strong first quarter earnings showing a significant increase in net income compared to the previous year further bolstered investor confidence.
Amazon's cost-cutting initiatives are a major driver of this surge. These measures, which include workforce reductions exceeding 27,000 employees, have played a crucial role in driving profitability. While layoffs have raised concerns about worker welfare, investors remain bullish on Amazon's future. Bank of America recently raised its price target for the stock, reflecting continued optimism.
Like commercial airlines.
The positive momentum surrounding Amazon has also significantly impacted the wealth of its founder, Jeff Bezos. His net worth increased by nearly $6 billion in a single day, solidifying his position as the second richest person globally, behind only Tesla CEO Elon Musk.
Meanwhile, AI continues to fuel tech stock rally. Nvidia leads the pack, accounting for 30% of the S&P 500's total returns for the year. Despite the recent slump, Nvidia's stock price has increased more than 150% this year. However, some still remain skeptical of this AI boom, calling it a bubble that could burst sooner than later.
Now, Brazil unveils a controversial plan for a global tax on billionaires. The proposal, estimated to raise $250 billion annually, aims to address wealth inequality but faces opposition from some G20 members. Here's a report on this. Take a look.
Brazil has proposed a bold plan to tackle global wealth inequality, a 2% minimum tax on the world's 3,000 richest individuals. This billionaire tax, estimated to raise $250 billion annually, has sparked debate among G20 nations. Proponents like France and South Africa see it as a solution to growing income disparity.
If we were to tax the wealth of billionaires at 1, 2 or 3%, you can raise your hand and the billionaires and I will apologize to you for the effort of solidarity and economic patriotism that I'm asking you to make. Because you have benefited from our schools, because you have benefited from our public services, because you have benefited from our public subsidies. And we are at a time of national recovery, of productive rearmament, of asserting our sovereignty, and we are going to do it together.
Meanwhile, opponents, including the US and Germany, raise concerns about feasibility and international cooperation. The plan faces additional hurdles due to upcoming elections and ongoing global conflicts. The proposal aims to address the limitations of traditional income tax. The super wealthy often exploit loopholes, allowing their fortunes to grow significantly while contributing minimally. This trend is particularly concerning as billionaire wealth surges, outpacing global GDP growth. Inspired by the recent success of the global corporate minimum tax, Brazil hopes to establish a similar framework for taxing billionaires. This plan would allow individual countries to choose how to implement the 2% minimum, giving them flexibility but requiring international collaboration to prevent tax havens from undermining the effort. Implementing this billionaire tax faces significant challenges. Assessing wealth for tax purposes is more complex than corporate profits. Additionally, enforcing the tax requires cooperation from nations that may be reluctant to target their own wealthy citizens. Despite the current political climate, Brazil points to the eventual success of the corporate minimum tax as an example of achievable global tax reform. They acknowledge the difficulty of achieving consensus quickly and instead aim to secure critical commitments from as many countries as possible. Business Bureau, WION World 1.
Astronauts aboard Boeing's Starliner are facing a delay in their return due to technical issues.
Now, the capsule's first crewed mission might need an extension, and SpaceX's Crew Dragon could be a backup option for this. Take a look at our next report.
Problems with Boeing's Starliner capsule have upended the original plans for the return of 2 astronauts to Earth, leaving them aboard the International Space Station as teams look at last-minute fixes. Since its liftoff on June 5th, the capsule has had 5 helium leaks, 5 maneuvering thrusters go dead, and a propellant valve failed to close completely. The current problems center on Starliner's expendable propulsion system, which is needed to back away from the ISS and position it to dive through Earth's atmosphere. Starliner can stay docked at the ISS for up to 45 days, according to comments by NASA's commercial crew manager Steve Stitch. He said recent test firings of the thrusters gave mission teams confidence in a safe return, though tests and reviews are ongoing. A source who spoke on the condition of anonymity said internally, NASA's latest targeted return date is July 6th. That would mean the mission, originally planned for 8 days, would instead last a month. Even with the propulsion issues, NASA has said Starliner would still be capable of returning the astronauts to Earth if absolutely necessary. That is, if the capsule must serve as an escape pod. If Starliner is deemed incapable of safely returning Barry, Butch Wilmore, and Sunita Sunny Williams, one option would be sending them home aboard SpaceX's Crew Dragon. NASA and Boeing officials, as well as engineers familiar with the program, told Reuters nothing about Starliner's current problems indicates that this would be needed. This is Starliner's first mission to orbit carrying astronauts, the final test needed before NASA can certify it as the U.S. Space Agency's second ride to the ISS.
All right, let's now take a look at all of the developments from the world of technology. ChatGPT maker OpenAI, it's delaying the release of its voice mode feature by a month to July because of technical issues. The company had originally planned to roll out the realistic voice conversation experience to a small group of ChatGPT users in late June. The feature will initially be released to a small group of users to gather feedback. It will be made available to all Plus users later. The new audio capabilities will enable users to speak to ChatGPT and obtain real-time responses without delay. Users will also be able to interrupt ChatGPT while it is speaking, both hallmarks of realistic conversations that AI voice assistants have found challenging.
A new study highlights parental hostility and peer bullying as major factors leading to mental health issues in teenagers. Previous research suggests early social media use could raise depression risks among teens and young adults as well. However, researchers from Brigham Young University found that factors like greater parental hostility, peer bullying, anxiety, stress reactivity, and lower parental media monitoring play a significant role. According to the study, having supportive friends and parents and using social media for less than 3 hours a day can be beneficial. This study is based on surveys of 488 adolescents in the US who were surveyed once a year for 8 years.
Scientists have developed lab-grown skin samples that mimic eczema flare-ups. They want to use this infected artificial skin to test new eczema treatments. Eczema is a complex, recurring inflammatory skin condition that affects over 200 million people worldwide, and it's hard to manage. Additionally, identifying triggers and treatments for the issue is challenging for those who suffer. Researchers at Sheffield Hallam University are using the skin to test new treatments for problems like atopic dermatitis, which is also a type of eczema.
So what we're doing is we're growing artificial skin in the lab, and we are making an inflamed model of the skin that's representative of atopic dermatitis. And then what we do is we put healthy skin bacteria on the models to make a more representative model.
If successful, this could lead to better skin treatments for millions of people. The synthetic skin enables cosmetics and pharmaceutical companies to test products as if applied to natural human skin.
For too long, it's been trial and error for a lot of people, just trying things to see if they'll work, and if they don't work, then they have to try something else. But where you've got something like this, a novel research approach, it means that there's an opportunity of understanding better what works and why it works, and so the opportunity